Hey, what's going on? Steven and Davis here from Wit Digital today with an awesome episode of Home Service Success TV. And today we are bringing you yet another absolutely amazing guest. Today's guest spent 10 years in a truck. He's a second generation master plumber. Then after that, he spent 10 years actually building, leading, and growing a multi-million dollar home service business, plumbing home service company based out of Austin. Did an absolutely phenomenal job there. And over the course of those 10 years, what he realized is how important it was to focus on leadership. And he had a couple years where like things might plateau a little bit and just said, okay, what's really actually going on here? And when he went all in on leadership. I mean, he went out and he learned from some of the best names on the planet, John Maxwell and many, many others, and spent well over a decade learning about how to integrate this whole leadership thing and how to integrate things like EOS and traction and the entrepreneur operating system within a business to really actually get it to grow properly. And after spending over a decade doing this, did an absolutely phenomenal job in the company based out of Austin, and they grew exponentially based on this. Then decided that he cared so much about this thing around leadership and helping others grow, left that and started his own, I'll call it a coaching business. He can correct me if that's wrong, called Built for the Trades, and is now helping other companies cut this learning curve from what he spent, 20 years figuring out a lot of this stuff, massively cut that learning curve, and at the same time, helping people build a better sense of community in the service industry by building masterminds as well as doing leadership and business coaching in this. So, and then just a couple other little things to make sure that he understands that he is such a badass. 2-time Ironman and a family man and a father of 4. So this guy definitely has his act together. Without further ado, Dan Dowdy, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, man, I couldn't have done that better myself. Stephen and Davis, thanks for having me on the show today. You're exactly right. Doing 20 years in the trades, I'm a proud tradesman, second generation master plumber. And, now I sit here and I'm able to give back to the trades and share my knowledge. And this is really part of it. So I hope that I can add some value to your show as we talk today.
Yeah, no doubt, man. You definitely will. And, I love doing those intros because even ourselves, right, as entrepreneurs and leaders, so oftentimes we downplay to ourselves what we've been through and our level of expertise and our level of experience. And it's always fun to help people remember like this whole journey that they went through and how much time and energy they really put into it, because it's easy to forget, right? But I mean, you spent 20 years doing this, and like you have so much knowledge and experience, and I'm sure we'll pull some of that out today.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, really, all of our experience leading up to this point is what's gotten us here to where we're at today, right? I wouldn't be in this position or doing what I'm doing with Built for Trades if it wasn't for that experience. I'm always forever grateful. And just thinking of our relationship with you and I, Stephen, it's just going back to our previous conversations leading up to 2020 and what we're doing here today. It's really, really cool to see our journey from, me running a home service business to you running WIT to now we're giving back to our specific, field of expertise. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, let's pull some knowledge out of you, pull some knowledge and some experience. So you spent 10 years in a truck. Then you spent 10 years running S&D, and then kind of overlapping, you spent a lot of time learning leadership and kind of what worked and what didn't work. If you could go back to those first couple years when you got out of a truck and kind of started actually running and leading a bigger part of that business, if you can look back and give yourself a piece of advice now based on everything that you know about leadership and just anything that you've learned now, what would you tell somebody in that position now, or what's some of the best advice that you would give them? Because that can be super overwhelming.
That's a great question. Getting out of a service truck, it was more of, being pulled out of a service truck into management and just saying, here you go, start growing this company. the first bit of advice I would give people out there is to start reading or listening to audiobooks and do that consistently. Like if you're out an owner, maybe in a truck running service calls, to me, there's no better way to grow than to start choosing some leadership resources, maybe something from John Maxwell or just EOS, Traction and Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, great books to read on how to structure your home service business for growth. But really it's that just learning to grow outside of what you do day to day. You know, it was interesting. I would say roughly about 10 years ago, I met a guy that ended up being a hunting buddy of mine. But I remember getting in his truck for the first time. He was probably the greatest salesperson I ever knew, and he sold food for Benny Keith. And I remember getting to his truck, and we were going out hunting somewhere. And he started playing an audio book in his truck, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, nobody listens to audiobooks, right? And this is before I was doing this. And he's like, oh yeah, I mean, everywhere I go, I'm always listening to different sales techniques and things to grow in my expertise and my knowledge. And he was the first person that really introduced that to me. I even had coaches before that. He didn't really talk much about it, but that was my first introduction. And so then I started spending all my time between calls or when I was on the road, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, and so on and so forth. So that's probably the biggest advice I would give to anybody out there if they're wanting to grow their business, is to start growing outside of what they're doing day to day in their business.
I love that, man. I'm the same way. I started like in 2009, right around 2008, 2009. I would wake up at like 4:30. I would read for an hour. I would journal. I would meditate. I didn't know what exactly I was trying to do. I just figured there's got to be somebody that has knowledge that can help me. And now pretty much all I do is listen to audiobooks anytime I'm in the car or even just in the house.
A big part of it probably is just changing your frame of mind, right? When you're like going call to call and focused on one specific thing or a couple specific things, it's like, how do I like change the way I'm thinking about the way I'm running my business, or, just life in general, the way I want to, have my days. What I want my days to look like.
Yeah, so there's two quotes that I really live by. One is by John Wooden, the coach for the UCLA Bruins back in the day. But he talked about when the opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. And so by learning every day, you're preparing for that opportunity. So that's always a big driver for me. And it's really important to stay focused on that, because it just gives you that motivation to keep moving forward. And the funny thing is I can't even remember what the second one was, but that's the first one.
Is it? So I have one of the quotes from you that I really like, which is find awesome and copy it.
Oh yeah. So I do like that, because really, I mean, in our industry, and probably in a lot of different industries, a lot of what's out there has just been repurposed and rebranded and put out into the world. We know we need to establish a vision. We know we need to focus on financials. We know we need to build systems. But what about your leadership? What are you doing to grow yourself personally? Because there's different terms for it, but I've heard it called like bottlenecking your business down. If you're somebody who's good at delegating tasks to people to do for you, well, then you're only going to be able to grow to your capacity that you can delegate tasks. You're more the micromanagement type. But if you develop some systems and give some clear expectations for people when you start delegating authority and know how to hold people accountable to that authority that you are delegating, then you can really start to see your business scale beyond what is just your current capacity. So that's why I become so passionate about growing leadership and what that looks like to expand your knowledge.
So Dan, as you're talking about this, I can't help but call out your boards right behind you. You got the vision map, vision, our mission, the core values. Mm-hmm. So it's like literally you've got that posted up, 24/7. You can't forget them. How did you arrive at those? Like, how did you decide what your vision was going to be, and what did that process look like?
That's actually a really good question, because I forget how long ago, but whenever my first coach introduced me to a mission statement, I want to say it was just a mission statement. We developed it together, and then I just never really posted it. And it was one of those things that just kind of got filed away, I guess, because maybe it was a cool thing to do at that time. And as I started learning more about EOS and I was being trained in that, and I started learning about the importance of your mission, your vision, your core values, your vision map, which is some people call that a organizational chart or a growth chart in their company. I started to realize that, hey, this is your culture. Like, this is really your culture. Like, your vision is a 10-year look on where your company's going. Your mission's the vehicle that's going to get you there. So it's your purpose, like why you get up every day. And your core values are the principles that are never broken in your business. So when you look at Dan, or you look at somebody who works for Dan in the company, you're going to see somebody who lives by similar core values. And we're all different. So it's good to define what that is, because when you start recruiting based on that, you're actually intentional about who you're bringing aboard your company. Because when you're sharing these things with them, people get excited. Like, it's more than just a job. Now, this is a career. They can start to see themselves and where we're going. Like, the vision map is set out 3 years. So what does it look like to grow 3 years in your company? It doesn't have to be perfect, but the picture is now there to where people can see it and say, wow, I can see myself. Like, how do I get to this position? Or, how can I achieve this? And it just forces your vision to move forward quicker than if it's just in your head or on a paper filed away somewhere.
Totally. Yeah, I love the fact that you've just got it posted. And it's funny, I worked for a company and we went through the exercise of creating a vision. It was a collaborative exercise with, all the employees involved. And that was really cool, but we never actually lived it. So after we set our vision and our mission and our core values, without living it, there actually just became a gap between, a very noticeable gap between where we were and where we aspired to be. And that was actually, I think, more harmful to the company because, it showed that there's a lack of leadership. There's a lack of, people taking ownership over these values that we've created. And I knew at WIT, we absolutely live our values, and it shows every day. Looks like you guys do the same. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I encourage my clients every meeting, every training, whenever they have their team together, even when I'm coaching them. In my coaching agenda, the second thing we do is we talk about a core value, mission, vision, their vision map, maybe their marketing strategy, or we go back and check on their quarterly goals. There's always, I'm coaching them through that same process that I want them to do for their team. And it's not just, hey, I'm just going to read you the vision. It's as we go through this vision, I'm going to ask you questions to check in with you, to make sure that not only are you talking about it, but you're actually living it. Because like you said, there's nothing worse than developing it and then not living by it. Now, when you post it like this, they're on nice signs. They look very important. I'm not talking like just write it on a dry erase board and put it in your office, because to me, that's showing that they're not that valuable. So we want to do something nice, display, have it everywhere, to where a healthy culture is your team is saying, hey, even though you're the leader of our company, I'm still going to check you respectfully on these core values. Like, if you're, if I'm part of your leadership team and you're trying to make a decision on another person on the team or a customer, we're going to check back in with our core values and see what we stand for, because everybody's going to be a little different, but it's a great way to make decisions and hold people accountable in the company.
Love that. Dude, we use, you've mentioned EOS, which is the Entrepreneurial Operating System by an author named Gino Wickman out of a book or a program called Traction. And so we run on Traction, and we run pretty strict on Traction too. And so one of the things that means is, as you know, is we evaluate each person based on the core values in each of their level 10 meetings, and we do it every other week. So every other week, every person is being evaluated by their peers and by leadership, which means leadership is also being evaluated on each of the core values every couple weeks, so a couple times per month, and then again at quarterly meetings, and then again in annual meetings. And at first it was slightly uncomfortable, but it's really, really helped our communication and transparency, and being able to say, hey, I rate you a 2 in this core value over the last couple of weeks because of this thing that you did or didn't do. And that's appreciated and open feedback.
I love that. I mean, it really, in leadership, it's all about not only building relationships, but also about the accountability. And the cool thing about having a system like core values in your company is it takes I feel like you're not doing a good job into, hey, like, these are written, or this is a written system that we all follow. here's where you're missing it, and here's what I want you to do to improve it to actually hit this. Or we'll talk about, instead of, so you go into that conversation and it's less about how Dan feels and more about like, this is the way, or this is how it is in order to be a team member here, is you have to follow a line with this. And it goes with, your core value. That core value analyzer is a great tool. And it's something that I definitely recommend companies doing at least quarterly.
Awesome, man. So I want to talk about, I want to do two things. One, in just a moment, I want to talk a little bit more about masterminds and have you explain a little bit about what those are, because I think that term gets thrown around a lot, but it's unclear a lot of times what it actually is, and some of the benefits that you've seen from it. But first, I want to go back to something you said a couple minutes ago, because I think that this is really, really important, and I want to drive the point home. When you were talking about empowering leaders, I don't remember exactly what you said, but here's the gist of it that I got, and I want you to give clarity on this. Basically, what I pulled from your statement was that when we empower leaders, we need to also give them power, or something along the lines of like decision-making ability. And the reason why I wanted to go back to this is because I think so many people, as their company grows, as they get more layers of leadership, they get some managers in place, they get some additional employees, they're not the one making all the decisions. I've seen it happen over and over, and you probably have too, where they move somebody up into a manager, director, GM role, whatever it is, and they tell them they have power to do things at the company, but the owner ends up just actually still making all the decisions and doesn't truly empower them. So just give me some thoughts around that you've seen over the years. Like, how do you truly empower? Like, how do you get out of the way as an owner to actually let your people lead? Because it's hard, man. The first time I ever really did it, it was very, very challenging, but so important.
Yeah, so that's really a great question. The first thing I'll say is we have to be okay with people making some mistakes to learn along the way. And I say that very lightly, because when I say, hey, this person may only be able to do it 80% as well as you do, a lot of business owners are like, whoa, I need 100, 110% every time. Like, they have to be perfect. That's probably the first mindset you got to let go of, is if we're gonna empower people, the only way to be empowered is to teach them how to do it. They actually apply it. We learn from mistakes and we apply it again, and we just get better and better every time we do it. So when it comes to delegating authority or empowering somebody, you really have to give them clarity on what it looks like to win. That's really the first step, and clarity of what it looks like to win can be something in the form of a position agreement. Like, here's your title, here's exactly what's expected of you, and clear, measurable terms, to where I'm not just saying like, hey, Stephen, or hey, Davis, you need to be a better leader. Like, okay, well, that's cool, but what does that mean? Well, that means that you need to be meeting one-on-one with your team every week. You need to be doing monthly scorecard meetings with them. You need to be, hosting a structured meeting agenda, all these different things that we can put into a position agreement that's very clear on what's expected of them. So that's really the first thing. The second thing is to have some kind of organizational chart, or what I call a vision map, showing exactly how the company is structured and who reports to who. Because when you're growing a company, one of the hardest things to do, for especially companies that were started and built by the owner, typically a husband and wife duo, it's their baby. So the last thing they want to do is risk letting anything go. And so what they'll do is they'll hire a service manager and be like, you're in charge of my technicians. And then the very next, like, an hour later, they're going to one of the technicians and telling them what to do because they see them doing something wrong. And instead of going back to the person of authority, which would be the service manager, and talking with them about what they're seeing, let them correct the person who's directly reporting to them. So what happens is the technicians get confused about who's their boss, and so that leads to you sitting down and saying, hey, Mr. Service Manager, Ms. Service Manager, you're not doing a good job. We're not hitting our numbers. Your training is not going well, or whatever it is. And they're like, whoa, I know you gave me this title, but every minute I turn around, you're going around my authority and telling my team what to do when I already had it structured. There's really nothing more frustrating than a boss or owner that does that. So for people listening out there, you have to give clarity. You have to live by a chain of command. And hopefully it's something that's posted and structured. And then the last thing is you have to trust but verify. A lot of times owners are like, okay, I've done the first 2 steps, now just do your job. And then they want to go golf or go on vacation and do whatever. And then a month later, they're like, whoa, the business isn't going well. What happened? Now they're blowing up because they turned the blind eye to it. So trust but verify, there's ways to do that. And what I'm not suggesting as an owner is that you're in every single call, every single moment of the day, like, oh my gosh, why didn't we put that call? Or why did that technician get a no-sell? Or all these different things that are going through their head, because your emotions are going up and down crazy, right? And you're driving everybody else crazy. Like, dude, just give me a second. So I always talk about looking at the law of averages. So when we're looking at accountability, the first thing I like to do is have some kind of weekly scorecard, the top 10 things that are most important that you look at in your company to know if it's going well or if it's not going well. The way I envision it is you're on a desert island and literally you're kicking back and you have no computer, no phone. All you get is a sheet of paper with these 10 KPIs or these 10 metrics on it. And it's typically like, total sales, what's your average ticket, what's your close rate, what's your booking rate, maybe how does your accounts receivable look? Things like that are good metrics to look at every week. So that way, whenever you look at your profit and loss statement at the end of the month, you're not shocked if you're not missing your goals. So you use that weekly scorecard to be able to sit down with your leadership team and look at it on your weekly leadership meeting, typically on Mondays, to where you're strategizing on what can we do better, where are we missing it, so on and so forth. So that's the first part. The next part is having some kind of position scorecard for the person. So if I'm talking back with my service manager, if I gave them a position agreement on what is clarity in their position, now I'm going to narrow that down with a magnifying glass and give them the top 6 things that I'm going to measure every month that is probably going to have a influence on whether or not they're going to bonus or not. So I call that a position scorecard, but they'll probably have something similar. So hopefully I'm not giving too much information, but that's really, as you start to trust and verify, you have to have all these things in place. So for people listening out there, don't be overwhelmed by the information. Just know that this is what it takes to really start structuring a business for freedom. A lot of people come to me and say, what does it take to build a successful business, but then be able to go play golf when I want to play golf? So these are some of the things you have to do that.
That's great, man. That's perfect. I love trust but verify. And then the other kind of thing that I took away from that is, as an owner, I was never perfect. So why should I expect anybody else to be? I made more mistakes than probably anybody on my entire team, right? And so when you said, hey, you got to be willing to let people make mistakes, it's like, that's how we learned, right? That's how we learned as owners and leaders. And so you've got to let people learn a little bit on their own as they develop their own styles and things that fit next to them. So I just always try to remember I was nowhere near perfect. And so I need to support my team so that they can learn in their own way, and then they become much better leaders.
Very true.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about masterminds. I don't know, wherever you want to start, like, tell me, like, what is a mastermind and what's kind of the point of it, or what have you seen as these really positive things coming out of it? Because I think a lot of people desire to be in a mastermind. They just don't know that that might be what it's called that they want to be in. And I think, between me and you and Davis, and I guess whoever else is listening, there's a bunch of really crappy stuff out there for like coaches and masterminds. Like, there's just a ton of junk. So give me a little bit on like just masterminds, whether it's how you have it set up or just what you've seen work really well.
Okay. So as far as a mastermind, just a quick definition, it's a group of 8 to 10 like-minded business owners. They're running successful businesses. They're coming together on a weekly basis on a Zoom call for an hour, and they're really just sharing their secrets to success. They're sharing some of their struggles. It really becomes an inner circle of successful or of other successful people across the United States that you can both learn from and also have people that truly care about you and hold you accountable in this setting. And so I'll kind of rewind a little bit back to my own personal experiences. You are right, Stephen. I mean, 10 years of myself being coach, hiring coaches, being a part of different groups, I realized that, very quickly this can become more about the money and less about the actual person that you're working with. And that's how Built for the Trade started to develop in my mind, as a vision of, hey, I wanted to really meet people where they're at and give them the best resources for the least amount of money as possible. First of all, with my free resources that I'm offering for a lot of business owners. The next thing is really educating people on what it looks like what's the next step to growing your business. And so going back to my own personal experience with mastermind groups, I joined a mastermind group, right? And this is before I realized that I wanted to start running mastermind groups. And I mean, the past year that I've been in this mastermind group, it's really been, I can't even tell you the value that it's had on not only my business with S&D, but also growing Built for the Trades and what I'm currently doing. There's so many mistakes I would have made if I didn't have that inner circle of like-minded business owners that I can come to on a weekly basis and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about doing this in my business. And as they, and they know so much about me, they're going to check me at that and say, hey, I thought your vision was you want to go here. Why are you going to do this? Or they're going to encourage you, or they're going to just give you great advice that can save you tons of money in both your business and your personal life, right? I mean, that's the other cool thing about mastermind groups is every member signs a non-disclosure agreement. So what happens in that group of 10, that weekly mastermind group stays there. It's truly a place that you can come to and share information that's never going to leave that group. And so that's really where my desire for it came from. And so as I started Built for the Trades, I brought on some coaching clients. I love coaching. I love one-to-one coaching. I love technician training. I'm doing some virtual technician training for some companies. But really where I know this company can scale and can build a big community is around the mastermind groups. And that's, I already have some started and they're filling up, but they've really been hand-selected business owners that I've networked with for the past 10 years that I'm bringing into these groups. And this is really the first time I'm starting to open it up to other business owners. And I'm asking, so if you're interested in this, you want to apply, obviously you can apply from the website, but even at that point, I'm still going to talk with you and kind of get an idea of where your business is at and really get an idea of who you are as a person. Because once again, as anybody builds a company, they want to build it around certain values and they want to make sure they're bringing in very quality candidates to the mastermind group. So that way, if, Stephen, you're running a home service company and you want to be a part of it, coming in, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room, and so you're going to be able to glean on other people's advice while you're in there.
Love it, man. I've been in masterminds since 2008, 2009. I mean, like when the word mastermind wasn't even cool, and it's one of the best things that I've ever done. And in the beginning, I didn't used to see the value, right? I was like, this guy just put together a bunch of people and like, he's not doing any of the work. Like they're doing all the work. Mm-hmm. And a couple years in, I started to really see the value. And it sounds like you're doing it right as far as cultivating and hand selecting the people within the small groups so that they can all add value to each other. You don't have somebody running one company so differently than somebody else to where they're not able to even communicate. That's really important. So it sounds like you're doing that right, which is awesome. But I love masterminds. I mean, the power of that knowledge in a group of 10 people that are running similar companies all over the country or all over the world. Like, man, one guy has a good idea. Now the other 9 companies get to implement it and run with it. And it might have taken 10 years to get to that idea on their own.
Yeah, it's very true. One thing about business that every successful entrepreneur will say is it's about relationships, and having a good mastermind community is just that. It's the relationships that you build. I mean, it's having that network, and really as we look to the future where a lot of these events that we were going to for best practice groups or whatever you want to call it are now becoming virtual. And so some of the biggest value that you actually got out of those events was the networking after the event, right? Sitting at the bar, talking with people, all those different things. That seemed to be the biggest part that most business owners enjoyed. Well, now we're doing that virtually through Zoom, and it's that same feel, right? It's that same feel where you're really gleaning off people's knowledge, and you're doing it at I don't know how to put this, but it's kind of like an entry level into the whole coaching training world, is because it's a less investment than if you're to hire somebody to do one-on-one coaching with you. So it's something that you could come in and get plugged into and really start growing from right away.
Awesome, man. I love it. Well, Dan, this has been awesome, man. Why don't you tell people where they can find out a little bit more about you, the mastermind groups that you're doing, the coaching that you're doing, or even just, I know you put out a ton of free, great content. Where can they find you? And then we'll wrap up with a quick couple little takeaways that I got.
All right, good deal. Yeah. So, so if you're looking for the mastermind group, just go to builtforthetrace.com/master-minds is where you can find the mastermind. And you can go on there to apply. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram. It's great. I'm always on there doing some videos, some value adds. And I have a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel too. So just check that out. But I'd love to hear from people.
Awesome, man. Dan, you are a fantastic resource. You have, decades of knowledge and experience just being in the company, learning leadership, and then now teaching it at this really, really high level. So thank you very much for your time today. And I'll run through a quick couple things that I got out of this today. So just as a nice little recap, a nice little bookend to this. First thing I got, if you're not sure where to start, or even if you've been doing some level of learning and education for a long time, listen to audiobooks everywhere you go. For a lot of the people listening to this, there's a lot of drive time in your life. Just take the drive time alone and listen to audiobooks every single place you drive. It'll be amazing what you can learn in a very short amount of time and how much content you can consume by just doing that. When it comes to your leaders, make sure that you're empowering your leaders and actually giving them the ability to make decisions. And like Dan mentioned, that you're not immediately going over their head as soon as you see somebody doing something that's not perfectly in alignment with what you expect. Don't go directly to that person. Go to the leader that you empowered and make sure that you're giving that leader the chance and the opportunity to kind of become their own leader, and make sure they're following your processes and they're delivering your core values and things like that. Be okay with people making mistakes. Same line when it comes to leadership. Nobody's perfect, and they've got to be able to learn their own thing. So be okay with them making mistakes. Give them feedback when you see it, but be okay with them doing it. Nobody's perfect, and I sure as hell know that none of us as leaders and owners were ever perfect along the way. So be okay with people making mistakes. That's how you're going to get out of your business or out of the day-to-day faster than most. A great way also within leadership is the Desert Island Scorecard. So what's that Desert Island Scorecard? So you're sitting on a desert island, you got no technology, somebody walks out from behind the palm tree and once a day or once a week hands you a sheet of paper with 10 or less key metrics on it to where you can sit back, take a deep breath, and know that your business is running well, or at least know if something isn't running so well, so that now when you do have a conversation with that leader, you know exactly what to focus on, and you can go back to sipping your Mai Tais and pina coladas on your nice private desert island. So those are some of the big ones that I got today. Oh, and masterminds. If you're not in a mastermind, check one out. If you like what Dan had to say about his, check out Dan's. If not Dan's, at least go somewhere to look for a mastermind, because they are extremely, extremely valuable. Just make sure you get in one that is highly curated and that the people are put into the right little buckets. That's super important when it comes to masterminds. So that's all I got for today. Thanks so much for checking out today's episode with Dan Dowdy, myself, Stephen from WIT, as well as Davis from WIT, with today's episode of Home Service Success TV. Have an awesome rest of your day.